Let's start with the federal government and what Trump has ordered. As far as I can tell, the only thing the federal government has really ordered is the 15-day thing we keep hearing Trump talk about, that is going to be up a week from Monday. He's saying we're going to reassess, or we'll tell you at that point. So what's the most onerous things in that 15-day requirement or rules, and where does the federal government get the authority to do that?
Well, the first thing I would have is he actually really ordering anybody, or has it been really strong, we'll call it really strong suggestions? I haven't really ever got the impression that Donald Trump has ordered a nationwide quarantine as much as he has strongly suggested it. And that's, I haven't actually, like on the state and the counties, I have spent a lot of time studying what they have actually said. I've actually looked at the writings there. But as for the president and the United States, I haven't.
Yeah,
I haven't actually read the text of those.
So the 15 days to slow the spread, the president's coronavirus guidelines, which, as you point out, perhaps these are simply guidelines, and the federal government has not actually. It's if you feel sick, stay at home. If your children are sick, stay at home. If you're an older person, stay at home.
And we saw that with Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz came into contact with somebody who had the virus at CPAC. And so what did he do? He self-quarantined. Donald Trump came in contact with somebody who had the virus. What did he do? He went out and got tested. Those are the reasonable things that we really are getting from the federal government. If you come in contact with somebody, go self-quarantine yourself. If you know that you've come in contact with somebody who has the virus, go get yourself tested. Let's be safe. Let's be cautious. These are guidelines. I don't see the same level of what we see out of the state of California. We're not seeing out of the state of Florida, which has a lot more retired people than we see out of the state of California. The Florida governor hasn't come out with an executive order and said, you are to stay in place. Where are the places that you see these stay-in-place orders? You see them in California. You see them in New York. I believe Massachusetts has done one. Illinois has done one. Traditionally, solid blue states are the states that have come up with these executive orders where they've just taken the guidelines of the federal government and they said, no, they're not guidelines. You're to shelter in place.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned something. We might as well. Politics is obviously going to enter into this. It has to. And you mentioned that these are blue state, meaning Democrat governors. What is it that causes a Democrat governor to be more inclined to implement tough safety measures compared to a Republican governor, for instance, like the one you have in Florida?
I think the issue is a difference in perspective and a respect for the Constitution and the concepts of personal responsibility and personal liberty. As a child, you chaffed at your parents telling you when you had to go to bed and who your friends could be. You couldn't wait to grow up to be able to make your own decisions. And that seems to be one of the biggest differences between Republicans and Democrats, is that the desire of liberty, the desire of, I don't want the government to tell me what to do. Whereas in the Democrat circles, they are much more open to government control and government dictatorial power. In the Republican circles, they are much more about freedom and liberty, where I am an adult, I can hear what the media is telling me, I can read the scientific reports, and I'm going to make the decision that's best for me and my family. Whereas in the Democrat states, you see much more of a willingness to say, no, I'm going to make that decision for you. So the way how I kind of portray it is, a Republican governor is more like a parent who has a 23-year-old living at their house, maybe home for summer from college for the summer, versus a Democrat governor is somebody who has a 13-year-old. living at the house. There's a little bit more control that a parent should exercise over their 13-year-old than over their 23-year-old. And I see the Republicans treat their constituents more like the 23-year-old child, and Democrats tend to treat their constituents more like a 13-year-old.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with you. But if there was ever a need for government, you would think this would be the time. I think the issues at play are what you just described, but also trying to understand, okay, who's right here? Is the Florida governor right to not impose all this stuff and not hurt his economy as much? Or is the California governor right that, no, this is a serious public safety concern. This thing is going to spread like wildfire. Millions are going to die if we don't implement these draconian shutdown measures. I think that 6 months from now or a year from now, we're going to look back and we're going to say one guy was right and one guy was wrong.
Well, let's go back to World War II. Pearl Harbor happened. 74 days later, the President of the United States, FDR, was under so much political pressure that he did something. He had to do something. And what was the something that he did? He interned the Japanese. He took away their property. He took away their liberty. He took away their right to pursue happiness, all in the name of political expediency of doing something to protect the Americans. And now as we look back at it, as constitutional scholars look back at it, we clearly see that he violated the Japanese Americans' constitutional rights. And we say, you know what, you do not have the right as a politician, in the name of political expediency, to take away the constitutional rights. What is the Constitution? The United States Constitution and state constitutions are contracts between the people and the government. It is a document that's not really designed to limit people. It is designed to limit the government and to say, government, there are some areas that you just do not have control over. And that's why we have the Bill of Rights, to say, hey, Congress, you cannot touch the Second Amendment rights to bear arms. Congress, you cannot authorize unwarranted searches and seizures. And one of the things that I actually find so interesting is the Third Amendment. The Third Amendment is probably the least litigated amendment.
Please don't ask me what it says.
The Third Amendment is the one that soldiers cannot force themselves into your house and make you house them and feed them. During the Revolutionary War, what would happen is the British would come into town and they'd basically find the nicest house and they'd basically plant themselves there and they would make you feed them. You go kill your cows, go kill your chickens, and some of the generals actually paid, but most of them did not. And it was government forced itself upon your personal rights, your home, your ability to make a living, your ability to feed your people. And the Founding Fathers were so upset about that they put in the Third Amendment, in the Bill of Rights, that government does not have the power to supersede over your home. That is your personal property. That is your personal sphere of influence. And so what we understand as we now look at what is going on, and let's look at the state of California. It started in San Francisco. San Francisco basically was as far as I can tell by timeline, was the first county to do the shelter in place. You're not going to go, we're taking the recommendations of the federal government, we're taking the recommendations of the state of California, but we're going to actually use our police powers and we're going to enforce it. And you are ordered to stay at home. Now, the statute that the county of San Francisco and the Bay Areas utilized is a statute that has been around for a long time. This is actually not the first time in the state of California's history that public health officials have tried to use their authority to quarantine people.